Hello, hello, everybody. Thank you for watching this next episode on this YouTube channel, Hiie Somatics. My name is Hiie. I am a specialist in somatic education, and I write about dance and movement. And this channel is dedicated to the wisdom of the sensitive, sensual, moving body that also wants to treat movement as a way of inquiry and development. And today our guest is, if you go through the channel and the videos, you see other interviews that we have done with Allison Pagano, who I admire greatly. Allison is so, I will start the list, and then Allison, you can continue. A dancer, choreographer, you have your own embodiment practice and a teacher training program. You're a world traveler. You're a spiritual person, and you bring all of this wisdom into how you treat movement. Allison, do you want to tell us more about what you do before we get started with this?
Yeah, thank you so much. And the admiration is mutual, and so happy to be here. And just, I love these conversations and the curiosity that comes from them. So yeah, so currently I lead a global dance teacher training through my work called Embodied Dance. And it's a bridge between the 20 years that I spent in the healing arts, and then the 20 years that I spent in the actual profession of teaching. So my curiosity was around how people heal through movement, through my own practices, and then what I started working on with my students. So I created a whole body of work and thesis around how we can heal with and through movement, and letting the body be the source of the information and also the integration. So yeah, that's my life's work that I feel like I'm going to be exploring and listening to forever, because I feel like I'm just grasping and listening to it.
Yes.
Like it's something that just it's like endlessly interesting and curious, and I feel like, well, I have a grasp on how it rides through. I'm the student of it, and I'm just listening to the work as it goes. So yeah.
Now that I listened to you, I got an idea for another episode also. I'll tell you later, but something about channeling and mediumship also in our work. I think it would be interesting to talk about. But today's topic, dear listeners, is letting go. And the reason I want to talk about letting go is that I feel like it is a phrase that we use oftentimes in our lives, but it's something that is really hard to practice, letting go. But it's like all of us, every day we have to somehow, one way or other, deal with this word. And for the purposes of this discussion, we can make it more precise also. But for me, letting go, it can mean so many different things. It can mean a letting go of a relationship that's not working, a heartache. It can mean letting go of a past version of myself, a thought pattern, letting go of a house, letting go of attachment to some kind of a memory that I have in the past. So letting go, broadly defined. And I was wondering, Allison, how do you relate to this theme of letting go, and especially through the perspective of movement, since our focus on this channel is like movement and the body. Letting go and the body, what does that bring up in you?
Yeah, this is really a vital, pivotal piece to how I work with choreography, and also how I work with my students, my clients, and the people inside the teacher training. So I have like a two-part process that seems simple enough. It's simple and complex at the same time for the depth of it. The idea of it's simple, but the depth of it is complex. And when we identify the way of working, whatever theme or whatever we're choosing to explore, the first part that we look at is what it is that we are letting go of.
Mm-hmm.
And this is involving an enormous amount of trust, because I feel like it's hard to let go without trusting that something will be there when we let go, which is part of the reason why I think we don't want to let go to begin with, right? Is because we don't trust that there might be something else there that could also be okay. So there's a safety that we must create around letting go. So it's setting the space of safety. But to speak about this a little deeper before I kind of get into the process, it's like I feel like there's this emptying or this letting go has to be met with an empowerment and a reclamation, which is the second part. So we kind of let the body know that there's something else coming so that there is this opportunity to let go. But I feel like it, part of what we miss in our fast-paced, nonstop culture is the ability to process through our own awareness, through our mental, emotional, and physical awareness, the things that we're holding that are quite honestly like stuffing us up and they're without sounding funny, like emotionally constipating us or preventing us from, truly receiving what we want because we can be holding um ideas, belief systems that are old, outdated, or just simply heavy and
Mm,
just not needed anymore. So, what we do that I've also realized that the body just is a safe place to work because in my years of doing this, and again, it's not to say that there anything is foolproof, but what I've seen to date is that the body only shows you what is ready or what is at the surface. So in the somatic work that I've done or these levels of inquiry and investigation, when we move into the body and we start asking these questions, the body will show you what it is ready to process and move through. It doesn't show you anything I have never seen yet. I could be wrong, but I have not seen yet the body bring forward something that the person wasn't able to handle. So there's a sense of safety and trust that you can rely on that the body is only going to bring forward what is ready to process and move through. So that I think is a huge piece of it. Um, should I take a little break here? So I
yes,
can keep
because yes, tell us, give us an example of this, please. This
going.
readiness, so that we can imagine. Oh, okay, this is what you mean. Like when you say bring forward, the body is ready to bring forward what is ready to, what is it is ready for. What does that mean exactly?
Yeah. So in the process, I start with a lot of inquiry. So we create a safe space around a theme that we're exploring. And we ask first, what is activated in the body around this theme? So we'll kind of really dive into a theme about whatever it might be, anything. And we'll bring up these questions, we'll bring up these possibilities, we'll bring these things into the awareness and just kind of let them sit. And that's the moment where we say, okay, what is active in the body right now? And the person will say, well, geez, my solar plexus is really tightening, you know? And it's like, well, so we'll go right into that. Okay, well, then I'll have them sort of describe this. And there's a couple different somatic, exercises that are pretty common that do this. But the thing that's different is we bring movement into it. But anyway, just to give an example, so we'll go, okay, so the solar plexus, and then I'll have the person describe with all their senses, what is the solar plexus feeling? Okay, it's like a rope, the texture, it's like a rope, and the color, it's like green, and it sounds like bells ringing, and it smells like fresh grass, and it, tastes like a lollipop, and like I'll just bring all the senses to it, right? And then the next piece is just to go into what is the earliest memory or image that your body can show you that it's connecting those sensory experiences to. And something always comes immediately, and it's often and usually not at all what the person was expecting.
Mm.
The person who goes, I don't know why this is coming up, but all of a sudden I remember when I was in the 5th grade and we went to the candy store and then this happened. And I don't know why I'm thinking of this because it's not related at all to the thing. But then as we dive into it, we start to see that there's a particular holding in the body around this memory or image that is actually connected to that thing. So what I say sometimes, like I've even shared this thought that like the body holds the truth and the mind holds the story, because I feel like the mind has a sense of what we think it should be, and the body has a different impression of like, well, here's what it's actually about, you know? So we uncover the layers of what was the story, what was happening, who was involved, what was the unmet needs that were happening. And most importantly, the thing that will often be the most revelatory is what is the meaning that we gave to what that experience was? Oh, this happened and I made it mean I'm not worthy of this particular thing. Oh, that happened and I made it mean that I'm not safe to show this part of myself. And then we uncover the kind of truth bomb in the body, you know, for me to not say it in an eloquent way. And when we can hold that sort of that level of truth, then we say, okay, we do the energetic pieces to mend it, meaning that if there were things that needed to be expressed or said or held, we create space for that. And then we bring the body into the integration, which is how does that need to be expressed in order to be fully moved through. And often I'll bring in like, you know, working with the elements, like does the, you know, does that part of the body need to move like air? Does it need like a kind of a push pull and a, you know, kind of mental sort of energy to it? Does it need to move like fire? Is it sporadic and unpredictable and, you know, can be fierce or, you know, does it need to move like water? Is it circular? Is it spiral? Is it, you know, a rush and a release? You know, is it like earth? Is it grounded? Is it, you know, lower body focus? So we can kind of use the elements sometimes to frame and give the body a place to explore how it needs to be expressed, but that's just a doorway in. So once the doorway is open and we let the body express itself fully, we just kind of empty the tank out in a way of like, let that full memory, now that it's been seen, witnessed, and held, let it have its full expression through movement. And we give that fully until it's just emptied. And then we put in the second piece, which is the empowerment, which is the archetypal energy that, you know, something else that you asked about.
Yes. Let me, this is so rich. And I'm like, wow, this is a fascinating process. Let me ask you this. I come to you with the intention of letting go of something like a relationship or a heartache or something. And now, do we do this process once, or do you, with your students, you go back to the same theme? You do it many times, and then with the same theme, many different memories and body responses occur.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and it's pretty particular to the person and, you know, the level of curiosity and investigation. I can take a particular topic with a person and spend 12 weeks on it and, you know, pull out all the parts and make a whole choreography, which is things I've done, you know.
Mm.
Or we can just do like a really focused, you know, hyper focus session where it's just kind of we go into this thing once and then we come back and we see, well, what is it today and what do you want to move through today? And it might be part of that theme or it might be something different. So it's really up to the individual or the group and how they want to go about it, because I can do it both ways. There's something to be said though for giving like a, you know, to moving through it fully over time and to allow, you know, the unraveling of all of the threads. It can be, yeah, like you said, quite rich. So yeah, both processes have different um, times and places, I guess.
Mm. Tell us more about the empowering aspect of the process. Also, the question that you were referring to earlier, dear listeners, has to do with the conversation we had with Allison before. This is another interview that you can find on this YouTube channel. But Allison told us about the practice of working with archetypes and changing the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves or a particular experience. And so maybe you can tell us more about that too. How can I, through movement and storytelling, learn how to let go or create a different story that helps me let go?
Hmm. Yeah, so this is great. Um, so I think that there's just incredible healing that can happen when there's the permission for the letting go, and when there's permission to take on a different quality. And there's something about that word and the energy of permission. And this is especially true in what I'll call the reclamation, or the inviting in of the new energy. So there's that saying of, nature abhors a vacuum. So when we've released something, there's this space, right, where it's that potential space. And we get to then, through clarity and through new vision, right? Oftentimes, when we have a moment of release, we also see clearer, right? Because that thing that it was sort of it was taking up space and obstructing a view, and it was there for a reason, and not to shame it or blame it. It had a function at some point, usually to keep us safe or to something of that nature. But when we remove something and we have more clarity, we can just say, oh, well, in this space now, I'm actually going to choose this. And it doesn't mean that you have to choose something, completely far off. And it can be just an intention. I want to hold the intention to have more love towards myself in a certain capacity, or holding the intention to receive a certain level of something. And this is where archetypes can really help, because if we haven't done something before, it's not going to feel familiar to us. So we're not going to know how to access it, right? So when we can bring in the energy of what an archetype is, and we give ourselves the permission to be in the identity of how we might take that archetype on, it gives a permission to step into something that's completely unfamiliar, but also empowering. And oftentimes when I'm working with people in these practices, we will we'll move into allowing that also to arise from the body. So it says, so we'll kind of empty things out, and we'll come back to the body. And when we desire to bring in this new archetype, okay, well, where do you feel that in the body? And how, what are the pieces to that feeling? And how does that archetype want to move? From your own connection to it, not from like even a mental energy, but, well, I'm in my body, it feels like this. I can feel in my sacral now, and I'm feeling this sort of thumping energy, and it's, that. And then we sort of give permission to go right into the body's interpretation of how it wants to start honing or practicing this new quality. And I think there's something just incredibly confidence building, and through this self-trust around, we can trust the body around what we're feeling, we can trust around what we're being shown. And it's very affirming to give it a dance and a movement, and to say, I hear you, body, you want to move like this right now, you need to do this in order to honor this piece, we're going to do this together. And it's kind of like you get, you kind of get the whole self on board. And I think that in itself provides just such a healing integration, where things come together in a way that the mental body couldn't do on its own, or just, moving the body around without kind of understanding, all the parts. Is that making sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is so interesting. When I strongly believe in the value of working with stories through movement too. Now, me myself, I haven't studied the archetypes so much, so I do that less. But in my classes, I teach Nia, for example, which is a somatic mind-body practice with choreography and free dance. And then sometimes I do a few songs also where we just free dance, and then somehow like a creative story somehow happens. And just the other day, the music was such that it made me think of like the story between a prince and a princess. Just like 3 minutes of free dancing with some little moments of narrative, like, okay, here's the prince. What does this prince feel like? Or like, well, how does he walk? And then the princess, the
Yeah.
same thing, like little emotions and little ways of movement. And then what happens if they meet, and things like this. And then it was so powerful, just those three little minutes of free dancing with the theme, with the story, because in my story, the prince was going toward the princess, and he said things like, I have a jacuzzi for you, I have a private dance teacher for you, I have like gold, and he was offering all kinds of things. And what did the princess do? She was running away. She was like, this can't be, this is too good to be true. And then during the little free
Wow.
dance, the princess changed her mind, and she was like, wait a second, I deserve this. Like, I don't have to run away from somebody who wants to give me love and
Wow.
material abundance also. And so though that little dance taught me, like, wait a second, maybe I behave like that princess. It's like this little creative storytelling
Yeah.
made me see something about my own story and how I could change this, or like I the story mimicked my own experience unknowingly, like I didn't plan this. And so I love moments
Yeah.
like this where like a creative story can teach us, can create a new story for ourselves, and as a result of that, we learn how to let go of some habitual way of thinking, for example.
Yeah, well, it brings the subconscious to the conscious as we kind of role play, these different beliefs or perceptions, right?
Yeah.
So that's how amazing. I love that.
And
And
then
it's fun, and you make it fun too, it
yes,
doesn't always have to be like a heavy thing, but like I think it can be really fun to just be like, wow, what would happen if I did have these
yes.
things, you know? Yeah,
I learn a lot through humor. It's like there's something that's funny, but I'm like, oh, wait a second. There's through
great.
this funny, lighthearted way of moving and imagining, like I learn so much actually. And so that makes me, somehow it connects me also to the child in me, and this just like this joy of playing, and through playing, learning about life also. And I think dances, especially
Hmm.
expressive ways of dancing, are great for this. Like, listeners, don't underestimate the power of dance and movement, and how it can and how they can teach us about life.
I
Eh,
love that. I would love to talk with you more about that and interview you as I always ask. I
oh,
like, I think that's such a great way, such a great doorway in, and just allows people to, I think playfulness is so
yeah,
sorely missed as we grow into our adult selves and we feel like we need to take on these serious things. And there's so much wisdom to be accessed through playfulness,
absolutely. And especially
right?
like, as you said, for adults, because we don't, to use your word, we don't give ourselves permission to do this. So otherwise, I love the word permission, by the way. I'm so glad you brought this up, because I feel like one of the problems with letting go, one of the reasons why it's so hard, is that I don't give myself permission to. I don't give myself permission to let go of, let's say, suffering or sadness, or it just feels unfamiliar to not to have those, or to like, oh, I need to hold on to anger. This person upset me, mistreated me. So the permission
Mhm.
piece of it, like how to access I don't have a very clear question in my head, but I felt like it's important to pause and highlight the word permission. Maybe it resonates with
Mm.
you, the listeners also. So you can ask yourselves, well, do I give myself permission to, not to just say, let go of this, but do I give myself the permission to let go of this? So we hold on to something less.
Mm.
Yes.
Great question. I think sometimes we also can realize that it's just we don't know that there's any other way, you know.
Yes.
Mm.
I loved what you said earlier about because yes, it's easier for me to let go of something if I see there's another opportunity in front of me right away. Like, oh, this is better, so let me get rid of this one. But when we don't have that other vision in front of us in a material world, or in our world of intentions inside of us, it's so hard to let go, as you said, because it feels like there's no, well, what do I do if there's nothing? So I love the fact that you help us in your work. You also help us see that this, to build this next vision, or to have this empowerment piece in it too.
Mm.
Feel safer. I feel safe to let go. Mm.
Mm. Yeah, thanks. It's an ongoing exploration, to
Yes.
say the
Allison,
least.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you also, like a lot of people, it comes up a lot when I listen to people and their practices of letting go, is this reliance on like elements of ritual. Like, okay, let me take a piece of paper and write on it some things that I want to let go of, and then maybe I burn it, or like the cutting of chords, or other ways of acting out with words, with art, the things that we want to let go of. Do you also use like these ritualistic elements in your practice, and do you what is your view on those?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, to be completely frank with you, this is something that I'm exploring more deeply for myself around my own beliefs and what it is that I feel, because I've done so many things, over the course of my spiritual life. I spent a lot of time exploring a lot of things, a lot of different things. And, even in its own essence, the dance practice that I just mentioned can be quite ritualistic in a certain regard. But what I resonate with most these days is if I feel a divine inspiration towards something, is when I'll move towards it. Most often won't just do something for the order, just to do it. It's, I'll feel a calling, when I wake up in the morning, that I need to go to this particular part of the land and sit there and, have a moment about something, Um, those pieces, I believe, are the most healing. Now, I understand, I've worked heavily in the energetic realms for my entire career, not intentionally, but it was just something that's opened up in me. Um, so a lot of these energetic processes, I feel like, can be helpful because, you know, I think we underestimate how powerful our energetic attachments are
Yeah.
to people and things. And I think in acknowledging that we want to disconnect from a particular something that is, I think one of the most powerful things we can do is even just to say, I revoke consent from allowing this particular energy, person, thing to be in my space, in my field, and to kind of sovereignly take back our space. And, most recently, in these past years, what I've also realized, because there's just a lot of practices to sort through, a lot of like devotion to things that I no longer can get behind in terms of just, objects and, worship and things of that nature. And for me, it's just come very clear back to what I'll call source energy, creator, mother, father, God. And I feel like when I'm connecting to that and I'm bringing that into my healing practice, that's when I'm having the best connection and the best results, is when I just bring it back to being what I'll call properly sourced, where I'm not kind of, and again, I'm not telling anybody, what I think is for anyone else to do. This is just kind of what I've realized in my own practice, which is, to really connect back into what I'll call source energy, to receive the divine guidance around how to move particular energy, or to cut a particular energy between me and something else, but to bring it to something higher above my own understanding, and not to place my devotion so much in yeah, some of these places that I used to, that were just not really producing anything helpful, um so, I mean, I can get into that. I don't know if it's necessary really, but I've just found that the most empowerment of my, my time in the spiritual healing realm, has come, the most profound has come back to just really coming back to our original mother, father, creator, source. Some people call it God, energy, and working as clearly as I can with that has been, I believe, what has opened up the most ease and flow and trust and safety that I've ever had. that I wasn't having before when I was doing like new moon and full moon rituals and things like that. And, kind of having these sort of looping patterns of trauma in my life. And it's just like I was quite, kind of circling in the same forms of habits, and things weren't quite working well for me. And I really had to get in a place of what I was sourcing my connection to. And I don't know if I'm going too far off topic here, but when I think of ritual, I think that when I bring it into what am I sourcing my energy to and what it is that I'm connecting to, that I find that to be the most important thing.
Hmm. I
Is
love how,
that
yes, I love how you also use the word devotion. Like, what am I devoted to? Is it a good thing actually to be devoted to this or this? Allison, what would you tell to somebody who comes to you? Because the reason I want to ask this question is that I think a lot of us have these what you called powerful energetic attachments to people, the power of energetic attachments to people. So somebody comes to you and says, how do I get over this ex? Or let's say I have a dysfunctional relationship, I need to end this, or this person is in my life, I need to somehow move beyond this story, but I don't know how. How would you start helping a person like this? What would you tell this person about energetic attachments, how to adjust those? Where would you
Yeah, yeah. It's such a great question. And, this has been my deepest work over the last couple of years of trying to figure out all of these pieces to it. So it's something I'm still very open to investigating, but I have some more insight into it now than I ever have before. And I always put a person's experience above anything that I think I know or should. So it's really, deep listening into what they're holding, what their perceptions are, um, and to be in agreement that I'm there to support and hold them. So in that space of safety and connection, I can then start also looking into what I'm seeing them hold in their body, what it's connected to, um, what this particular person is attaching into. We can kind of work through it in the energetic layers, but more often than not, the unhealthy attachments um, can be they're doorways into our deepest healing, because they are the surfacing of the unmet needs, and they are the surfacing of the unexpressed traumas oftentimes. So we often through those processes will end up doing like either a combination usually of an inner child healing and soul retrieval aspect, where we are going to the root of what that attachment is really speaking to, because usually it's not about the person but what the person is representing that has been missing for them, or it's been reinforcing a particular pain, which is a rejection, a betrayal, and abandonment, right, that we keep facing over and over again until we kind of go into the root of what um, those more causal energies are. So my gift in a way, if I can say that, is that over the years, I've cultivated processes of working in the energetic or in the multidimensional realms. And I know it can sound strange to a lot of people because we don't talk about these things typically, but I've found my most profound healing by accessing the energetic connections to these particular people and situations. And it it's helpful because it starts depersonalizing um, the experiences that we're having, so it's not so much about this particular person and why it's not working out or why I can't make it work, but we start seeing more clearly the layers of why we feel so drawn and why we feel so attracted. And often it's a child self or an unmet need, which is, deeply looking to be held and witnessed. So it keeps finding the same sort of familiar um, pattern person over and over and over again. And I myself have done this almost my whole adult life. You know, I feel like I'm in a healthy relationship for the first time now, but everything I did before was somewhat in that realm. So the process would be very much all of those pieces. And to bring it full circle, if a person was open to it, we would then create movement and dance from that to integrate it through the body, kind of
Yeah.
how I described.
Yes. And earlier, this, by the way, I think is such important work. Me, I have
Mm.
lots of experiences with these kinds of troubles myself too. So I recognize the importance of precisely this kind of approach to relationship difficulties, relationships of all kinds. Yes. Now, I wanted to ask you this. Earlier, you mentioned that sometimes you create a choreographic, like a dance piece also out of it. Maybe it's important for the listeners to know about the significance of putting the experience of letting go into a dance that can be performed. Why would that be important? Is it necessary? Why do it?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you know, I feel that there's something really profound in exploring these things. And you know, the choreography provides a thread of repatterning. So, you know, when we source the movement from the body in terms of its letting go and in terms of its reclamation, and we sort of put it together in a structured piece, it allows for then like a new body language, right? And this new body language is giving our psyche, our emotional body and our mental body a new rebooting,
Mm,
right? We're kind of declaring through our physical self, which I think is the most powerful way. We're physically declaring a new story.
mm,
And the repetition of physically declaring a new story, you know, the very little that I know about brain science, right? It's just kind of like dancing accesses more parts of our brain than almost anything else that we do physically. So because you've got the brain so active while dancing to music and through this kind of structured choreography, you're sort of reclaiming and repatterning. And it was my personal experience that I discovered by accident back in when I was here in Australia back in 1999, that especially as a closet introvert at that time, bringing forward something so tender and having it being witnessed
mhm,
in a safe space. Like when I brought my healing journey through dance to a group of 25 people in my college course at the time, and having it be held and witnessed, there was something in that that was so different than me just being in the studio by myself and moving through it. There was a declaration and a new identity that was also formed, and also a confidence building around it. Like you know, I'm okay enough to share this. And to, you know, I think it's important to sit the space that you share it in. But there's something in the space that you share it in that can be very um, just nourishing to know that you can move through that and that you're still okay. It's like a rite of passage, if that makes sense.
absolutely. I agree with you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
This element of performance is very present in the Tamalpa life artwork, which is another for
Mm,
listeners, just
right. Yeah.
another it's another somatic dance practice, expressive art
Right.
also. So they use a variety of different creative practices. And so the
Mhm.
performance element is very important at the end also, because there's this belief, and I have experienced this also, that some kind of shift happens when we perform in front of a group of people who hold the space for us. I have written an article about this too, if you listeners want to read
Oh, I
about
love that. Yeah, if you could share that with me, that'd be great. And yeah, I love Anna
it.
Halper's work, and kind of sorry I never got to meet her.
Yes.
I don't
And
know
I
if
think
you.
that,
Yeah.
no, I never met her either, but I think the important piece for the listeners to keep in mind also is that to make this kind of a dance performance, I think a lot of people would say, well, but no, I'm not a performer, I'm not a dancer, da, 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 da. But it's not about being a professional dancer by any means. It's about the act of moving the body with your intent, with your story, with your da, 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 in front of other people. That's where the power is. So anybody can do it. It's not about
Absolutely.
professional skill. And then with people like Allison, you can learn how to do it. So that
Yeah, thank you. And you know, what I used to do before the world shut down is I would have these performances. I would bring people and put them through their stories and we would put them on stage. And, you know, half of them had never taken a dance class before.
yes, exactly.
And it was just they were committed to exploring the truth in the body and unveiling it and being curious about it. And they were scared too, you know, they were scared. They were like, oh God, what am I doing?
Yes,
But it was ultimately super liberating, you know, to actually move through it fully. But
yes,
no, it wasn't a process that was designed for dancers, you
yes,
know, only.
true. I want to ask you, Allison, a somatic kind of question. This is actually like, this would be a very usual, intuitive way to come to the topic of letting go, actually, because especially if we look back at some earlier somatic practices, or earlier meaning historically, they developed earlier than some of the later ones, like the Alexander technique or the Feldenkrais method. So there, one big element would be to look at the body and see where you can release holding patterns, where you can release muscular tension. So letting go in terms of just like bodily discomfort. And then, maybe also through releasing the bodily discomfort, I also release some other things. But if we bring
Mhm.
this back to this, like for example, a student comes to your class and you see with your somatic eye, with your intuition, you see, well, this person actually has a way of standing. You already feel without any movement with the person that there's a lot of tension in the pelvis.
Right.
There's a lot of tightness in the chest. So I
Yeah.
wonder also if do you work with that dimension also? That's one
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
I'm going to lay the second question onto it right away. The second question,
Great.
you know, and it would be interesting to hear you speak about this too. I sort of myself have mixed feelings about this. Sometimes I believe in these things and sometimes I take a step back. But in some practices, it's also like we ascribe certain, or people ascribe certain emotional characteristics or to certain parts of the body. So for example, if you're tight here, this means
Mm.
or if your pelvis is tight, it means this. Like, do you also sometimes work with this dimension that, okay, I see a physical discomfort, a misalignment, and that misalignment might indicate that in this realm of this person's life, there is something misaligned also.
Mm.
These two questions.
Yeah, so they're super related. And, you know, I think the thing that stands out to me most about what you're sharing, and I so appreciate you asking, because it's something that I'm, you know, investigating for a while myself, which is how, you know, how we assign meaning to these tension pieces. And I've studied in particular, I might have shared on some other conversations we've had through this vernacular of the collared method of body work that I've studied, where, you know, I've been exposed to this healing technique that has this dictionary of tendencies of between the shoulder blades is here, and you know, the right knee is this and the left arm is this. And the cautionary piece to it that's always given, even for Patrick Collard himself, is that this is just merely like a toolbox to get you curious. You know, it's not a diagnosis. And I think that, you know, if we approach it from a place of holding curiosity and not seeking to diagnose or correct, but we just hold it with a question. And more, you know, the most important piece is really sourcing what is the truth of that person's body. And it may be directly correlated with what's shown in this dictionary of tendencies, and it might have its own piece that, you know, opens something else. There's not going to be a definitive correlation for everything that's black and white. I don't believe that either. But I will say that I do find it extremely helpful in these instances, especially regarding unwinding the tension, is to bring a mental and an emotional awareness to what that tension is. But that has to be, you know, truthfully examined with compassion, by the person who's experiencing it, because there will be resistance if they feel like somebody is trying to,
Yes.
tell you, oh, well, this is because your mother and that, it's just not going to work, right? There has to be a curiosity and just a place for it to open into and go, well, geez, it's more like, I keep banging my knee. Well, geez, what are the thought that I'm having every time I bang my knee, Or, well, geez, I'm having this chronic lower back thing. And what seems to be happening in my life when I'm noticing this chronic lower back thing showing up? And those kinds of questions can give you an unraveling into your own answers, because you'll realize you're like, oh, I banged my elbow again. It's like, oh, I was beating myself up about this thing. Okay, and then you start to see like the little patterns that you have. Um, and, not to make yourself, um, overly, what's that word, hyper vigilant to like everything that's happening in the mental emotional part of it. But I think it can be empowering if you allow it to be. And you can just say, oh, okay, yeah, for me, it was like something like this, where I would get an inflamed tendonitis every time that I was about to move to another country or something like that, because, and then I started to understand it through the lens of like, oh, okay, the Collard method says that it's the fear of the future and the fear of the moving. Okay, I can relate to that. And I can relate to my knee being, sort of in this fearful kind of tightened place. So I think as long as we hold the information lightly as a guide and not as a diagnosis, that it can be helpful. But,
Mm.
I think the danger is in putting a label on it and just saying, well, that's who you are and that's what this is, you know?
That's
What
great.
do you think?
I agree with you as a method. I like what you said about well, let's use these ideas as toolbox to get you curious. I think so that we start to explore, yes, what might be happening. Uh, I think that works. I think that works with people, that works with clients, because me too, sometimes I resist. Yes. So somebody tells me, oh, this means that. I'm like, no, don't tell me what this means. Let me
It's
feel it.
like dream interpretation. It's like you have your own symbols and you have your own connections to things that, right, on some level.
Yes. And sometimes, especially these days, I'm learning to trust. I'm learning about resonance too, though. Like sometimes I feel certain words or sentences or insights, they resonate with me, and it's different from me mentally thinking, oh, this must be true, or I'm taking on. It's like I feel this, there's something right about this. So I also I would add to this toolbox to get curious, but also to test out, to explore this feeling of resonance also, because maybe it is true that we hear something or some kind of what feels like a diagnosis. It resonates with us because there's a link somehow. We feel like that is maybe.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's absolutely important to say, is that, it's your own, you have to feel it in your own regard that there's something that you're connecting to about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think resonance is the perfect word.
Yes.
Yeah.
Listen, this has been such a great time with you as always. I feel so inspired. I'm like, oh, I have this idea for this next interview, and da 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 da. You're always an inspiring person to speak to. Is there
Likewise.
anything?
Yeah.
Thank you. Is there anything you want to add that I haven't asked you yet? Or maybe, like your final words in this interview to somebody who has troubles with letting go, or whatever you want to say as a
Mhm.
conclusion?
Yeah, I don't mean to sound too cliche, but I think we don't give enough merit to things like having patience with ourselves, softening, and being with the heart, like deepening into the heart in a way that we don't have to figure it out or have all the answers, but how do we hold ourselves with more compassion a lot of the time? And again, I don't mean to sound cliche about it, but I think, so many of us who strive to do big things in the world, who are doing big things in the world, we can get a sense of sometimes we have to overpower all these pieces, right? And there can be just so much beauty in the softness of just saying, I need to surrender this peacefully because I don't want to hold it anymore. I don't want to You know, and how can we invite in the compassion and the nourishment to also, yeah, create the space for that. If that makes, yeah, because that's something that I feel like we don't offer ourselves enough, you know, compassionate space to be with fully, and yeah.
I agree. And also to understand that when I listen to you and I feel the word compassion, for example, how it resonates with me is also this idea that, well, that it takes time, this letting go, you know, that maybe a little bit this time and a little bit this other time, so that when I feel, okay, again, I've stumbled into this pit of, then I know, okay, how to create this space of compassion for myself and start again, continue the letting go process.
And part of the holding on is that we judge ourselves for not having letting go, having not let go better than we, you know.
Or faster, or yes.
Right, and it's like there's actually more freedom that comes in when, you know, I feel when we stop judging the process, which is hard, right? We want to judge the process and make, you know, this linear leap into, and you're right, sometimes it takes longer than it's necessary, but I think when we take ourselves off the hook about what it needs to look like, that's when letting go can actually happen.
Very nice.
What do you think?
I think I have mixed feelings about this. You know, the
Mm,
reason why I say this is that I believe very strongly, this is like my biggest lesson actually about my most recent processes of letting go, is that it is a process, and it evolves over time, and I can't have the full wisdom about this process from the very beginning. Like, I need to see how life happens, how I change, how my emotions change, how I have a new conversation with somebody, I read a new book, and then they become part of the letting go process.
right.
And I feel like the different stages have different phases also, so I have to go through it. The reason I said I have mixed feelings about this is that sometimes, speaking of myself, I do have an attachment though to like continuing things.
Mm,
So it feels like it's a process, but there's something inside of me that doesn't allow the process to end. And I go back to what you said earlier about giving myself the permission to end something, or to let this
mm,
process be finished. And so I'm in the process of figuring out when the process is continuing and when the process has actually finished, and I just go back to it out of habit because my thoughts are used to thinking this, because I'm used to being in the process of letting go. I don't know if I don't know if I'm making myself clear to the listeners also, but
mm.
that's what I'm feeling these days. Like, when is it over? And I just keep going back to it because it's a habit for me to go back to it. So,
Mm,
uh, to allow myself to give time for the process, and then to feel the timing of, okay, now this is in a different stage, or now this is over. Actually, here it is over. You have let go. Do you realize this? Here you have let go. You can live your life differently now. Like, sometimes it's hard for me to see that I have actually let go. Life is different now. It has become a habit
mm.
for me to be in the process.
And it's good to use sometimes the past. I mean, you know, we say sometimes in the collared method, it's not good to use the past as a reference, but sometimes it is good, especially when we're having hard times letting go, to say, oh, look at all the things that I thought I could never let go of that I've let go of. You
Yes,
know?
this is, by the
And to
way,
give a reminder of those
yes,
things too, because
it's
there were
like,
certain times in our life we thought we could live or die without something, you know, and then we're going, oh, that doesn't really mean too much to me anymore. I think maybe I could do that now too.
yes. And you know, one of the little things that I'm doing in my life these days is like, what I'm trying to do is having a certain sense of lightness about letting go also. Like, oh, what is it today that I can let go? What can I let go of today? This becomes this. So because we tend to associate letting go with things that are really heavy emotionally. But my belief is, I'm trying to tell myself this, that if I learn how to let go also of like small things, it becomes a normal thing to do in life. It's just
Right.
every day I let go of something. So then it maybe also becomes a little bit less about these big things, which
Yeah, like the expectations of like, oh, I thought I was going to show up at this place and order this thing and they're out of it today. Oh, well.
yeah, yeah,
Or, little stupid things. Yeah, just like that. Yeah.
one can also have maybe some playfulness with letting go.
I love it.
Oh, good. Allison, where can people find you if they I will put this in the information box, but you can tell us also the name of
Yeah.
the website and
So yeah, my work is called Embodied Dance. My website is embodied-dance.com, which is, I'm gonna have a whole new website by tomorrow, which is pretty exciting. On Instagram, I'm about Embodied Dance, Facebook, Allison Pagano. Have a group there called Embodied Dance for those on a path of healing through movement. But yeah, I'm just generally on social media and I connect with people, all over the world in these different healing capacities. So always welcoming new connections in any regard. And it's been just delightful. And you always inspire me so much. You're like one of my favorite people to talk to. And yeah, it's amazing. We haven't met physically yet, but I just adore what arises here, and I adore you and all of your the power that you have in seeking and asking these things.
yes, thank you. Maybe we'll cook something up in Australia, or maybe you come to Paris or Estonia or New York. Who knows where we're going to meet, but it will be a great pleasure and a great surprise. So the listeners who live in Australia also, you can go and see Allison in person too and do the training in person.
Yeah, I'm in northern New South Wales, and I'm actually probably, once I get this next layer of being here confirmed, then I definitely will be offering things in this area. I'm in northern New South Wales, like I said, north of Byron Bay. So thank you for having me. Thank you for the beautiful space that you create in these questions, and more to come.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you, listeners. Also, you can follow us on Instagram and social media and then be in touch about personal sessions and dance classes and all kinds of programs. We both do that with great pleasure. See you in the next episode.